And record. There's Bruce.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. You doing okay?
I'm doing great. Hope you are.
Yes, sir.
How's the new president at Cleveland?
Oh, I think he's shaking things up, but it's all good right now.
Oh,
We're getting through his 6-month period.
yeah. I'm hoping to get an audience with him before 2 months longer. I'm going to try to design a new master's degree program for Gardner Webb, and what I would like to do is find somebody who would be willing to maybe talk with me about a specialty in community college administration.
Yes.
What I'm thinking about doing is creating a master's degree non-licensure program, and it would serve as our master's in DEOL or in organizational leadership, but it would have 3 prongs. You'd have like 6 classes, 6-hour blocks. 3 of them would be a core, and then you would specialize either in private and charter schools for your other 3. We have a lot of people in those who don't need licensure, but they need a master's degree. And then we'd have a track for organizational leadership, like for community colleges and small colleges, and then a track for public service, like police, fire, city officials. That's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to get that up off the ground. I've got a person who will consult with me on police and fire, Brittany's husband, Rusty Graham. He's just joined our faculty. And then I've got a person who will consult with me on charter schools, Kate Alice, who just finished the program. I don't know if any of you know Kate Alice Dunaway, who just graduated this past semester. But I need a community college person. Dr. Hamilton was encouraging me to maybe talk with your president. I'm guessing that there are jobs at the community college level that would require a master's degree.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
And so I'm thinking that would be a need area. Certainly, we would need to do an analysis to find out what it would take, or if there's a demand out there. And so that kind of leads me into tonight, which is a risk assessment. Anytime you're thinking about a consulting project or starting a new project. And so that's our task this semester, is develop a risk assessment. Risk needs to be analyzed and cataloged as either high, medium, or low. The criteria for assessing the risk level need to be documented in this milestone. And for high and medium level risk, a mitigation program needs to be outlined as an essential component of the risk assessment. And so apply this to the project that you are now working on, your consultancy project, and do a risk assessment. Now, there's a couple different ways to go, and I'm going to kind of leave that up to you, which way that you want to go with your risk assessment. Now, there is just a traditional risk assessment. This one has 4 categories in it. Dr. Hamilton's outline just wants 3 categories: high, medium, and low. But I like this: certain, likely, possible, unlikely, rare, and then high, medium, and low, or low, medium, and high. Now, this, you can Google risk matrix, or you can read some of the more known authors in this area. There are a lot of those names here, but the main thing to remember, if you just do a regular risk assessment, is that there are problems with risk assessment, and poor resolution errors, suboptimal resource allocation, ambiguous inputs and outputs. Now, if you know that you have ambiguous inputs and outputs. That means you're not, that things are more of a qualitative nature. You might want to do a SWOT analysis instead of a risk assessment. And that's why I said you have a choice to make here. Have y'all worked on a SWOT analysis before? I'm sure you probably have. I don't know that you've done that. I'm thinking that you might want to do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's also a risk assessment. I find that a SWOT analysis is when things aren't cut and dried, when you're working more in a qualitative area rather than quantitative area. Quantitative being there are hard numbers, there are validated measures, there's data that's generated in number form. You can do more of a risk assessment. When you're doing qualitative things, which are people's opinions, interviews, focus groups, those kinds of things, when your data is not what I call hard data that we'll talk about next semester, you might want to do a SWOT analysis for your risk assessment. Because a SWOT analysis can help to explore critical aspects of an organization's products and projects. That's more number type things, but even its reputation and goodwill, that's qualitative kinds of things. So if what you're working with is more of, we're trying to improve public perception, we're doing a marketing those kinds of things where you might not be able to just point to a number and say this worked, or you got to do this and get this number up, or this is a bad number, it's got to go down. If your consultancy is not based around numbers, you might want to do a SWOT analysis. If your consultancy is based around numbers, trying to make a good number go up or a bad number go down, then the risk assessment may be more appropriate for you. But again, you haven't had 738 yet, which is you're probably happy about that, not having 738 with me. But the notion here is there is more than one kind of data. Now, I've told you I'm a numbers person. I'm the quantitative person. Dr. Hamilton is the qualitative. But I will argue to the end that there is data from qualitative assessment measures. Interviews and observations do produce rich data. It's mostly dispositional, but it is data. And too many times when I ask students, what should we do with this person, or what should the outcome be? The first thing they'll say is, well, I don't have enough data to make a decision. You got more than enough data. It's just not in number form. So if you know that your project, your consultancy is not going to generate a lot of hard number data that is on from a validated measure, an accepted measure or metric, then you might want to do a SWOT analysis rather than a risk assessment. But you have to know that. Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about in terms of qualitative data. Let me go back here. Go here. I could have already had this loaded. I loaded all these other things. But sometimes when I preload this, it doesn't work. Here we go. All right, this is one of the case studies we're going to do next semester on giving feedback. This is Jasmine. Assume for a moment that you've been called in to develop a personal growth plan for Jasmine. Now, Jasmine is the leader of a team of 11 customer service specialists. It's very important. I mean, the job here is customer service. And here's what the team members have to say about Jasmine. Whenever I have an angry customer or need Jasmine to make a decision, it seems like I never get a response from her. She has canceled my last 3 meetings with her. Except for staff meetings, she's never around. Now, those would all be negative in my opinion in terms of somebody working in customer service. Doesn't sound like Jasmine has the dispositional skills to be in customer service, which is an immediate feedback kind of thing. Now, I've had students argue that the next two bullets that are positive in Jasmine's favor. However, I do not see them that way. Team member said, I like how she always gives us notice of what's happening from the corporate's office and asks for our input. I don't think that's a positive. One of the worst things that you can do is give people false decision-making capability. When information comes in and you're asked as the leader to act upon it, asking for input or giving people the false impression that they can choose to or not to do that from corporate, I don't think that's a good thing. I was glad she asked for volunteers to participate on the system redesign team rather than making decision on her own. I don't believe in volunteers in organizations either. You assign people based on their skills and abilities. Asking for volunteers is not a good idea either. She's very childish. I don't appreciate being made fun of in front of my peers. She has a biting sense of humor that sometimes turns other people off. I like how she involves us, but everything on this team becomes a debate. Sometimes she needs to make a decision, tell us what to do. That's part and parcel of what I was talking about earlier. She asked me, what do you think we should do when I have no idea? She's the leader. She should tell us what to do. So if I read this correctly, there's about 16 different data points here. This is data. It's not just information. So when we get to this, you're asked to, give this feedback to Jasmine and maybe work a professional growth plan. But I always ask, and you'll kind of get it, you'll kind of let the cat out of the bag, but I always ask, as an organization, do you think Jasmine is where she needs to be? Would you continue on with Jasmine in your organization or in this role? And when I ask that, students say, well, I don't really have enough information to make that decision. You have more than enough information. You have more than enough information. It's clear Jasmine doesn't need to be in customer service. Everything customer service is about being prompt. It's about being courteous. It's about being able to make a decision on your feet. Nothing about this data set says customer service. Now, the second question is, well, she shouldn't be in customer service. Do we need to keep Jasmine? My response would be no. I don't need this person in my organization. We go back to Collins, getting the right people on the bus and getting them in the right seat. I'm not sure there's a seat on the bus for somebody with these dispositional traits in any organization, especially not in the leadership role. So now, what I am telling you is, through this example, if this is the kind of data that your consultancy is going to generate through interviews and observations and focus groups, you might want to do a SWOT analysis rather than a risk assessment. A risk assessment is better when you have hard number data in terms of how many customers were served, how many were happy, how many were sad, how much return business did we get, hard number things that there's no debate. How many people, after dealing with customer service, dropped our service? How many were satisfied and kept our service and even maybe expanded and come back to us for further services? Just immediately prior to starting this session, I got a phone call from a vendor that I had work done today, and they called me and did a follow-up interview. It was electronic, about the service technician that came out today. That's data, because guess what that man does? He does customer service. And one of the things they want to know is how likely I would be to recommend their service to somebody else. Will I continue my service with them, and would I be interested in further services with them beyond what I already have? That's what customer service is. You don't get that with people who look like Jasmine. But now, we don't have any number data here on Jasmine, not sure a risk assessment would be a good thing to do. A SWOT analysis would be more appropriate when we have these kind of data, but this truly is data. All right, so that's your task this semester, either do a risk analysis or do a SWOT analysis, a risk assessment or a SWOT analysis based on the type of data that your consultancy is going to generate. Data is not just data is data. There's different kinds of data. Qualitative data comes from interviews, observations, and documents. Quantitative comes from is number data that comes from a validated source, a validated measure. We know that it measures what it intended to measure. A watch measures time, a scale measures weight. Does your data come from a validated measure or an accepted measure in your profession? If you have numbers that are indisputable, like a good number went up or a bad number went down, do the risk assessment. If it's more ethereal, if it's more dispositional, then do the SWOT analysis. All right, I'll pause and catch my breath. Have I completely confused you?
Dr. Lamb, I have a quick question.
Yes.
We're using the Denison textbook this semester, and
yes.
There's a culture change model, which is an analysis of culture. It's about 60 questions.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we could use that as part of this. Ends where you have these 4 components and you have a number for each component and you're analyzing, and then we'd analyze whatever our consultancy was on that scale. What do you think about that?
Yes, I'm actually teaching 736 this semester, and we are using the Denison text, and that is that would be good. That is not obviously it's not a risk assessment and it's not a SWOT analysis. It could be part and parcel of a risk assessment. It could be the quantitative piece. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It can be the qualitative piece, even though it's collected in quantitative form in the form of a survey. You could also do it in the form of an interview, but it could give you more dispositional data. That is correct. So if I were going to use that, I would do a SWOT analysis and I would do that. That way you'd have both ends covered. If I was going to use Denison, that cultural survey, I would do a SWOT analysis. I would use that for the qualitative, and I'd do a risk assessment. I'd do a risk assessment and Denison. Of course, you could do a SWOT and Denison, but that kind of covers the same thing. Yeah, you can do that. Certainly, a risk assessment has multiple facets, but a risk assessment and Denison would be appropriate, especially if your methodology is mixed, if you're generating qualitative and quantitative. So if you know that your consultancy is going to generate both qualitative and quantitative data, then that would be a good idea to do something on both ends. Let me see. All right, this is what you're talking about. the culture survey on page 8. See, a lot of these are qualitative ideas. Team orientation, empowerment, capability development, core values, agreement. See, these are all qualitative terms. And so I would use this with a risk assessment, which is more quantitative based, if I were going to do this. This would take the place of the SWOT, which is more qualitative in nature. This is what you're talking about, Lori? Yeah, I would use this with a risk assessment matrix, separate from this, because as you can see, creating change, customer focus, these are all qualitative ideals. They are basically opinion data, and that's what qualitative is. It's somebody's opinion, it's their view. It's not something that's an absolute that we can measure like weight or time. Yes. And so when you're trying to get feedback on the efficacy, the effectiveness of a program or a change, this would be appropriate. You know, when you're affecting a change through your consultancy and you want people's feedback, this is their thoughts, feelings, opinions. That's when you would use this. Yes. But you can also do, you know, this is more directed at the organization rather than a project, but it can be adapted, yes. So if you look at this, as you can see this is more about the organization itself, but now that may be a part of your consultancy is looking at the organization in order to justify or create a reason to change. But now this is generally used to assess the culture of an organization. But it can be adapted to your purposes. Does that make sense, Laura? Is that what you're looking for? Okay. Other questions that we have tonight? Okay. Does everybody understand their task, what's going to be expected this semester? Let me go over one more thing. Let me, for high and medium level risk, or for, if you're doing a SWOT for your threats, you need to write a part in your program, need to write in a mitigation program into this milestone. If we're doing SWOT, we've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. For our weaknesses and our threats, we would need to write something mitigating those if we're going to do a SWOT. Remember, a SWOT can help explore critical aspects of an organization's products and projects. It can be used for reputation and goodwill, but that's more qualitative. That is more qualitative. All right. Questions that you have for me? So if I was going to do Denison, I'd do a risk assessment, a risk matrix, and Denison. You can just do a SWOT if you're looking for if you're looking for more just a qualitative, or you could use Denison alone if you're doing qualitative. There are a lot of different options. There's some good options presented in 736. Again, the culture survey from Denison. There's a couple more in the materials this semester in there that you could look at as well. But don't limit yourself to just a risk matrix. It may not fit what you're doing, is my point of tonight, is there's a lot of different options. Don't be in a hurry. We're still in September. Kind of as this semester evolves and you do more reading and you do more understanding, you know, this is something that you will kind of find your way through to what would be the most appropriate way to go about completing this milestone. That in terms of the methodology matches the methodology that you're using in your consultancy in terms of your qualitative or quantitative methodology that you're using to collect your data. All right. Questions? Anything for the good of the group? We finished 5 minutes early for the first time ever. All right. You know where I am. Call me, email me. I apologize for having to cancel before, but classes were canceled at 5 and I couldn't do I should have gotten you an email. I thought they sent everybody an email like they did me that said we were closed. So, but if you need me, I'm going to come and see you folks. Let's confirm that date. I'm going to be on campus and see you on the 20th of October. I will see you then. If you need me before then, just holler. Okay? Everybody have a good evening. Thank you for joining me tonight. It's good to see you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.